What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Say What You Like Sports Podcast. On this edition, we are bringing to you the 2019 NFL Draft coverage. The draft is just in a few days, and we're getting ready, gearing up, ready to talk some draft. So, Eric, I got a question for you. Is Kyler Murray a lock at number one?
Oh, man, it's looking like it. It's one of those things where we try to trace the genesis of where Kyler Murray going number one starts.
Right.
And it feels like it all started with Cliff Kingsbury, talking about before he was even the head coach, taking Kyler Murray one if he had that draft pick.
Yeah.
Flash forward, he's the head coach now of the team that holds the number one draft pick, the Arizona Cardinals. But that's really where you kind of just see it. Nothing else has really shown like that's their interest. They've had some visits, and I think that's kind of the only other indicator was if you have a top quarterback in your house, or if you believe Rosen's a quarterback, why are you bringing in Kyler Murray at all?
Right.
That's the only other thing. But I would say it's his guy. They want to run his offense. They probably should draft him, and I feel like at the end of the day, they probably will draft
Right.
Kyler Murray.
I mean, we really haven't heard anything from Cliff Kingsbury in a while, but that only leads you to believe that it's a reality at this point. And I've kind of heard him talking up Josh Rosen a few times, and the only reason that comes to mind is he's got to be talking him up to give him some trade value. So, I mean, I think at this point, I think it's pretty fair to say Kyler Murray is as close to a lock as it's going to get in any draft with a team that has the number one pick.
You know what? I agree with you because as much as I'm a little bit nervous because I do want the Bosa to fall to the team that comes after them. But, if you invest in someone like Cliff Kingsbury, he went from a failing head coach in college football to a cup of coffee as the OC of the Trojans.
Right.
And you bring him in, you want him to feel comfortable with the quarterback because he is the offensive mind you brought in to revitalize your team.
Right.
So, of course, you want to bring someone in that, runs his offense, and that happens to be Kyler Murray.
Right. I'm with you. But with all that being said, where does that leave Josh Rosen?
If I was Josh Rosen, I probably would want out. And,
Me too.
Josh Rosen has a little bit of that, Jay Cutler, that attitude where,
I mean,
why
you
am I
have
going
to gain Josh Rosen's respect.
Yeah.
And you got to imagine by now he's done with the Arizona Cardinals.
Exactly. And so think about it like this. When the Jets fired Todd Bowles, their first thought process that went through is we need a coach to help groom and cultivate Sam Darnold.
Right.
Whether we agree with the hire is different than what their thought process was. We need a guy to help Sam Darnold be the best he can be. And I don't feel that's what the Cardinals did in hiring Cliff Kingsbury. His offense is not predicated towards what Josh Rosen does best. He's a pro-style quarterback.
Right.
Drop back. You let him pre-snap. You let him see the reads. A lot of play action. He's not a bad quarterback, I don't think. I think you can't knock him for what happened with Arizona this year. So if I'm him, I'm like, well, you guys aren't going to run. You're going to run an offense that's probably not going to make me look good. People are going to boo. You guys have never committed to me. If they were committed, Kyler Murray would have never visited the Arizona Cardinals.
Right. That's the way I look at it, too. It'll be fun to see where Rosen ends up if the Arizona Cardinals indeed do take Kyler Murray with the number one overall pick. But next question I got to ask you, as a 49ers fan, if Kyler Murray's number one, how excited are you to be picking Nick Bosa, presumably with the number two overall pick?
I mean, I've been fearful of putting that out in the universe. This is the first time that I've not watched any of Nick Bosa's highlights. I've not broken down his tape at all. He is the name that I will not look at until he is a Niner. I just want that player to come in. He completes that defensive front. He helps rebuild the pass rush. I would be very excited to see what a line that would be Nick Bosa, D Ford, DeForest Buckner, and you can put Eric Armstead or Solomon Thomas as the other three technique and see what they can do on third and long. They really made an effort to revamp it. I think it's going to be Nick Bosa. If he's there, he will probably be the draft pick.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not, because number one thing on defense is you have to get to the quarterback. And you draft a player of Nick Bosa's caliber, and I think you're looking at presumably one of the top defensive lines in the NFL.
With the potential to be, if he pans out and and D Ford is healthy, I mean, they have a chance, like you said, potentially to be the best defensive line.
I mean, if he's even, 3/4 as good as Joey Bosa was, then you're working with something on that D-line.
Yes.
So I got to be excited about that pick at number 2. But moving on down the draft, the Jets have the number 3 pick. Where do you see them going? Because that's where you start kind of questioning, okay, what can happen here?
Because it comes down to twofold. One, do they even stay there? Because I think from what you hear, they want to trade out because they want to recoup some of the picks they lost for the Darnold trade.
Right.
They don't have a second round pick this year, so they want to obviously try to recoup that. If they do stay and stand pat at 3, let's say there's no one that wants to trade up for them, that's going to be hard because unless someone's trying to trade for a Josh Allen or a quarterback like Haskins, you're not going to find many trade partners. Even I don't think it would take much. Normally, trading up to 3 if there was a quarterback would take a lot. We've seen these trades in the past where it's multiple 1s, multiple 2s, 3s. This time I don't think it'd take that much. But if they stand pat, I mean, you have to look at Josh Allen. If they view Josh Allen, some people do as like a Khalil Mack type player, or they could take Quentin Williams, or you're starting to hear a lot of buzz about Ed Oliver, who is similar physically to Aaron Donald. Doesn't have the maybe the hand technique that Aaron Donald has, doesn't have the skill set that as far as the technician that Aaron Donald is, but as far as raw talent is pretty up there. So they have a couple places to go. They have to revamp their defense, or who knows, they may shock everyone and get a wide receiver to help Sam Darnold.
Yeah, the bigger surprises have been dropped on us in previous NFL drafts. We have the Oakland Raiders scheduled to pick 4th in the 2019 NFL draft. Now, the Oakland Raiders have multiple picks in the first round, as do teams like the Giants, the Packers have multiple picks. What do you see teams with multiple picks doing, and specifically, what are the Oakland Raiders doing? I mean, what do we even expect out of John Gruden and his staff?
The unexpected.
Right?
Yeah, the unexpected. I mean, you hear the story of them kicking out all their scouts.
Yeah, did you hear that?
That's crazy, right?
Right.
Because they don't trust them, and because they're going to do something outlandish.
But it kind of proves John Gruden, in some weird way, it proves Gruden right? Because that got out.
Yeah.
So one of those scouts is talking to the media.
Yeah, that's true. And you just kind of look at what could they do. They have a lot to rebuild. Their defense is a sieve, and the thing about the Raiders is it's hard to guess because you can never really tell how Gruden thinks. Gruden's the type of guy that's like, yeah, I love Derek Carr. What,
he's a maverick.
Yeah. Well, you'll give me a 6th round for Derek Carr? I'll take that. I didn't want him anyways.
Yeah, right.
Right. Like, oh, we love this guy. Well, we'll get rid of him now. I mean, they got rid of their best pass rusher for a first round. They got rid of their best wide receiver for a first round. They already kind of answered that wide receiver question with, acquisition AB. So, do they go pass rush? Do they take the best available player, which is, if Quentin Williams falls to them, he's their best available player. So people think he's the best in the draft, but they're not. They have talent at defensive tackle.
Right.
They've taken talent. Maurice Hurst, was a player they took, and he turned out to pan out to be pretty good. Do they want to trade back, acquire even more? They feel like, we can get what we want later. Do they trade? Here's the question: if they love Kyler Murray, and let's say Kyler Murray doesn't go first. Do you give up 2 of the 3 first-round picks you have to get Kyler Murray if Gruden loves him?
I mean, if anybody's in a position to pull that off, aside from, say, Bill Belichick, who's secure in New England, and Jerry Jones, who's secure in Dallas, it's going to be John Gruden.
Yeah.
No other person on any NFL team in the front office has that kind of power to be able to pull off that kind of like outlandish trade. But I think it's possible. It's just a matter of, it's like we said in the beginning, John Gruden is the epitome of a maverick. I wouldn't be shocked if that ends up going down, if Kyler Murray is not selected at number 1. I can also see him taking a 4-2 wide receiver that nobody's even heard of. We've seen that happen with the Raiders too. So when it comes to the Raiders, to me, I believe the Oakland Raiders are, without a doubt, the biggest wild card in this draft.
That's very true.
Yeah, so let's move on from the Oakland Raiders. Tampa Bay Bucks have the 5th pick. Anybody specific you think Tampa Bay should be looking at?
I keep hearing linebacker.
Okay.
And the linebacker at LSU, I think Devontae White's his name.
Yeah.
But they could go a couple different ways. They need some more edge help. That's a team and they're in transition with their defense. They're going from a 4-3 to a 3-4 with Todd Bowles.
Right.
I think on offense they're pretty set. I'd be shocked if they go offense. But defensively, they can go a couple different ways. Edge. I don't know if they're going to keep Gerald McCoy. They have to, select another one. You keep hearing Devin White's name.
Right.
Linked to them as far as his ability to be just a great linebacker and the leader of that defense.
Right. So, let's take a look at a couple of teams further down the draft. We did talk a little bit earlier about the Oakland Raiders, but let's take a team like the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay Packers have multiple picks. What do you think is a sound strategy for the Packers in the 2019 NFL Draft with those picks?
Man, see, it's interesting with them because if you would have asked me before free agency, I'd say defense. But, you got Preston Smith. You went and got Zadarius Smith. You've added pass rush talent. You've added Adrian Amos. You've gotten a safety. So you've kind of tried to shore up that side of the ball with free agency.
Right.
So, does that tell me, do they get one of the tight ends to help Aaron Rodgers, whether it's a Noah Fant or Hawkinson out of Iowa, who's more of a well-rounded tight end? Do you go wide receiver? Do you go running back? I think if I'm them, you can either go linebacker. That's a good thing. I still think they need to revamp their defense because the offense goes as Aaron Rodgers goes.
Right.
It's just going to depend if the new head coach, his name escapes me right now, if they click. But then you also think about that late round pick, the Saints pick they have.
Yeah.
Right. And this is around the same time. Aaron Rodgers is around the same age Brett Favre was when they drafted a quarterback, a young Aaron Rodgers, to replace him. Do you go at
It's
Drew
so
Lock?
crazy to think about that because I remember at that time thinking of Brett Favre as ancient already. Like, this dude's still playing when guys like Steve Young and Aikman that he started with were out of the league already.
Yeah.
But just to think that Rodgers is at that age already.
Where they could, they could sit there and say, you know what, it's time that we have to kind of move forward or start to have a succession plan because he's been hurt. He's been hurt.
He has. He did get hurt last season. He has been hurt the last couple of seasons.
So, you have Aaron Rodgers who's been injured, the last couple, years. You had the collarbone, you had the knee. And so you start to worry, is he going to hold up? We can't look at Tom Brady as the standard, until we see more quarterbacks.
And he's sort of become the standard at this point. Like I was saying, I remember players like Aikman, and like I was saying earlier, you looked at him and he's in his 8th, 9th year and you're thinking, damn, we need to work on the next quarterback. But with guys like Tom Brady playing for 20 years.
He's the anomaly.
Right.
You can't look at him. He may just be rare, and I think there are things that change, but, you start to look at, maybe they look at it like in 3 years, as crazy as it sounds, maybe Aaron Rodgers isn't worth that time anymore. And they're looking at him like, you know what, if he keeps getting hurt, the Aaron Rodgers we remember is great, but we need to start. And if you can get a Drew Lock with a ton of potential, with a live arm who can move, and you can groom him just like you groomed
big
Aaron.
arm quarterback. Yeah. Makes you think of Brett Favre.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure Green Bay would be happy to hear there's a player like Favre on the way. What other prospects are you looking forward to seeing where they land? Like, for instance, I'm looking at Josh Jacobs out of Alabama, running back, and I'm wondering, who really is in need of a running back, and could this dude go in the first round? Because I think he's got first-round talent, but who really needs a running back in the first round?
I think we finally hit kind of a dip in the running back market. You had Todd Gurley, then Zeke, and, Fournette, and Christian McCaffrey, and these running backs that went early in the first round, and all of a sudden, I don't know if it's Jacobs' talent, which I still think is pretty elite. Most people have him pretty high up, but, you start to look at teams like, who's really going to spend? Do you have this skill that maybe we can get him in the second round? If you're a team like, let's say, Kansas City, who just lost out, Kansas City has to replace. Yeah, they lost it on Kareem Hunt. Now they have to replace him.
Indianapolis doesn't really have
they
the
want
running back position solidified.
And they say about him is that he can catch the ball out the backfield. He's a complete 3-down back. So do you wait? Maybe you can get him in the middle of the second, or do you trade up and get that 5th year? Because that when you trade up, you got 5 years of this back. And running back, their value is in those first 5 years.
Right. That's when they usually have their best years. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if one of those teams takes a player like Jacobs. As far as wide receivers go, I know we talked a little bit about DJ Metcalf. Where do you see him winding up?
Oh man, he is interesting. You got the DK Metcalf, wide receiver out of Ole Miss. I mean, 6'3", 230, ran a 4.3, 340, can jump. He is physically an amazing receiver, just the talent that you see, but doesn't have great change of direction, which is noted on his 3-cone, and he drops the ball. And so you wonder what teams are going to weigh out those options. Like, you have a physical talent you can put out on the outside and say, man, you can run 9 route, you can run a post, and there's nobody that's going to keep up with you. You're right. Even DBs who are fast are running out of a back pedal.
Right.
And he's big and strong. Most of them don't even come close to his strength. So, but then can he change direction? Can he run a whip route? Can he run, can he set up, those are the flaws. Can he set up defensive backs when they kind of crowd him or they know how to handle it? You go up against experienced corners, they know how to take away your strengths. You know what? I'm going to inside leverage him, force him and as fast as he is, I'm going to force him out of bounds. And I'm going to make that catch hard. So you look at teams like, I don't think the Raiders, but who knows? He ran a 4.33, so the Raiders
That's
have
very, very impressive for the Raiders. That's all about that speed.
Maybe New England, they sit there and say, you know what, we need a guy like Gronk. I mean, he doesn't play the same position, but we need that big physical presence that can go down the field for Brady. You look at Seattle now has 2 first-round picks.
Yeah, that's another team. That definitely has the capital to spend a first-round pick on a project player like Metcalf and seeing if he works out. I think a player like Metcalf really has to end up being well coached. Yeah. Because the tools are there. We can see it. It's just, someone's got to coach this kid up. Maybe a team with an established veteran at the wide receiver spot that can take him under his wing and really help this player bloom and reach his full potential. Because without a doubt, Metcalf, the size, the speed, we see it. Everybody saw it at the combine. He's got the potential. But can it all work itself out and come to fruition and be that Pro Bowl type wide receiver you need to get out of a first round pick?
Yeah.
You got to see some return on the investment,
Yeah.
So, I mean, outside of that, anything else you want to talk about here? Any surprises, things out of the 2019 draft?
A guy like, and I think I just came up with him while we were talking about it, but a guy like Greedy Williams, the cornerback at LSU, how, like, you look at when the season started, he was the top cornerback, and how he's like third now. He slipped off. His tape wasn't good. And the issue they have with him is they consider him, quote unquote, a buffet tackler, where he chooses when to tackle, if at all. And the stories come out is that
he's making some business decisions.
Yes.
All right.
But what gets him is exactly that. Was he making business decisions, or was he just not a good tackler? There are other things, his issues, biting on routes, jumping routes too early. He was susceptible to the double move. So it's interesting to see what happens to him, because he is talented. He was considered the best cornerback coming in this year. And now guys like DeAndre Baker, Byron Murphy have kind of passed him up. You see them going ahead of him for their skills. But it would just be interesting where a guy like Greedy Williams goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of surprises in the 2019 NFL Draft. But I'm sure we're going to be here ready to recap it all after it goes down this Thursday.